part of Democrats who were handed a resounding defeat at the polls.
It's a very different strategy, Savannah, for that reason. The signals, I interviewed House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries just this weekend. He said they are going to be looking for common ground with President-elect Donald Trump, particularly on issues that relate to the economy, to lowering prices. At the same time, he said we're not going to shy away from disagreeing when we feel it's necessary. But they are in a moment of soul-searching. Remember, after former President Obama won his second term, Republicans were in the wilderness.
Chat, what's going on?
That wilderness
mic check, mic check.
So
we in the building.
Absolutely right to be focused on the Democrats right now as well, because politically speaking, what we are about to witness over these next 4 years will be some type of, and we'll have to see where it ends, a new leadership. No one can answer that question. Who's the leader of the Democratic Party?
Let me just point out this picture as the outgoing and incoming presidents make their way to the Capitol. There are people along this route here. You'll see, and some of them appear to be in uniform, perhaps traffic directors, but there are people in this area that was going to be part of the parade later on. They still have the barricades up. We've seen a lot of people here in Washington, D.C. Who walking around who don't appear to have
the day has come, y'all. The day has come. What's going on, chat? What's going on, chat? Welcome to another episode of Stay Woke TV. It's your boy, Mr. DJ Grimlock. Listen, today is the day, my boys. Trump is back in office. And for better or worse, the country is moving on. So let's go. Let's get it started. Y'all know me. I don't like to waste no time. Make sure you hit that like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, and let's go.
Signed up for, but
Stay Woke
those who
TV.
are lucky enough to be along this path might catch it.
It's supposed to be a parade route that's much different than what was expected, but we've got a few diehards who decided, we'll bundle up with the hand warmers on and get a
And you
glimpse.
can hear some of the cheers as they go by.
To this point about what Democrats do next and what this looks like here in a Trump administration where, as you have noted throughout the morning, throughout the day, Savannah, the Republicans control the levers of power in that branch. Remember that Republicans have the narrowest House majority in modern political history, right? They don't have 60 million seats to deal with here, right? And when you look at some of the numbers here, there are 3 Republicans in districts won by Democrats in the election.
They won Senate and Congress. Like, what else do you want them to get? They have the slimmest minority. Man, y'all boys, everything is Republican. Don't listen to any of these people. Don't listen to these people. This is straight Republican House, straight Republican senators, straight Republican Supreme Court. Y'all boys, shut up, man. What are they talking about?
Trump, which is to say that there is
this shit is straight red, just red. When you see the United States, I want you to just picture red now, but nothing but red.
Democrats an incentive to try to reach across the aisle and work with Republicans here. You're already seeing it from, for example, Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman, who has already said he would back at least some of the incoming president's cabinet picks, like incoming potential Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And so I think the dynamic is going to be really interesting given these close margins. Speaker Johnson doesn't have a whole lot of extra Republicans, so to speak.
They has a 1 seat.
They can't pass the legislation without Democrats in many instances.
But it's interesting because to take a step back, I mean, it is worth noting that right now, as soon as this swearing in takes place, Donald Trump, the Republicans will have the White House, both houses of Congress, as we've observed before. He also has a conservative ideological majority on the Supreme Court. So
Thank you.
It's a Republican-controlled Washington
Thank
now.
you.
But American voters also tend to keep their elected officials on a very tight leash. And
True.
in the midterms, how many times, Kelly, as Capitol Hill correspondent, you would see that at the midterms, you see
it all change up.
The House that controls the party that controls the White House lose seats. So everyone knows in Washington they're on a tight leash and a short clock, and that's why you see that urgency.
The midterms always feel so close at this particular moment. You're inaugurating a president at the same time. The midterms are hovering so close.
And whatever honeymoon Donald Trump has in this moment, it is with the knowledge that the clock is ticking. He only has 1 term. He has less than a term based on what you just described. And if he is going to accomplish all the things he said, he's got to act quickly. And he's got to do it when he has a level of control and influence on other Republicans and to some degree on Democrats, because winning every battleground state and the popular vote does send a message.
Where will Democrats dig in?
Yes, it does.
Certainly,
in these early
it will
months?
be some of the issues that relate to unwinding programs that certainly existed during the Biden time, but also challenges to their core constituencies. They would want to see things like protections for workers and the environment. Those would be key areas. Concerns about the negative effects that could come from the immigration policies of President Trump. There will be many who say securing the border is a needed priority, but what are the unforeseen problems that result from
Are Democrats hoping and thinking that there will be an overreach, that this notion of a mandate that perhaps Donald Trump will take too far? Is that kind of the strategy?
Absolutely, particularly on the border, I would say. That's an area where you could see some robust debate and oversight. Don't forget oversight. I think that's going to be significant as well. It's worth thinking about in this moment the agenda of President-elect Trump. He wants to do something big on the border. He wants to do something big on taxes. I won't get into the process, I promise you that. But how
You've got 4 years to talk about it on Meet the Press.
But how does he get it done? And that's when we look at Speaker Johnson
How
and
does he
Senate
do
Majority
it?
Leader John Thune, who you spoke to earlier today, Savannah.
I can show you how. Executive orders, my boy.
They become
Signs.
so significant.
Executive
how do
order
these men
this.
work together?
Well,
Executive
this is
order
an
that.
incredible shot, this motorcade.
Executive order
and
that.
we have the advantage of a camera and a truck watching the whole thing. There's these wheels rolling, and they're just a few moments away now from the Capitol, and the swearing-in ceremony will get underway in earnest. I want to go to Craig Melvin, my colleague who's over at Emancipation Hall. This is a first for this venue for inauguration, and it's by necessity. The cold, of course, having moved everything indoors, and that makes this the overflow room. So, Craig, as we watch these images, is it still that party atmosphere?
Because
that you were
remember,
describing
let
earlier?
me break it down for y'all. The president can sign executive orders. When he signed those executive orders, those orders go to the Congress. The Congress that's owned by the Republicans. And the senators that's owned by the Republicans. And if they sign off on it, it's law. Now, there is a way you can't go too far. Now the Supreme Court has to come and say, okay, this is constitutional. You can do this. This is allowed. But if it's too far, they can be like, listen, brother, you can't do this. This is against the Constitution. We got to throw it away. But the Supreme Court is Republican too. Remember, they're the ones who stopped the abortions. So, yeah, my boy, what you're seeing right now is a Republican-led America. Not even going to lie to you, fam.
Few minutes I've seen
It is what it is. Hey, look, I'm gonna try to maybe try to jump in the shower real quick before the shit start, because I think it's gonna take them another 20 minutes, they old ass, to get to the freaking stage. I'll be back.
Political director, the commandant of the Marine Corps, also here as well, a man named Eric Smith. So they are still milling about here. They're about to start taking their seats. They have been watching the same images that we're seeing right now. They're watching them unfold on two giant jumbotrons here in Emancipation Hall as well.
All right, Craig, thank you. I want to go back to Ryan Nobles. He's outside the east front of the Capitol where the arrival is taking place. Ryan?
Yeah, that's right, Lester. Yep, we just saw the motorcade pull up here on the east front, and we're now watching as the two presidents start to exit the presidential vehicles, and they'll walk into the Capitol. There's an enormous security presence around them. Probably about 10 or 12 vehicles accompany them up the Capitol Hill to the Capitol, where they will walk into the building now. We can see Jill Biden being escorted out from her car. And this will begin the process in earnest. We can see Melania Trump being escorted in as well. It looks as though the two presidents, they're actually underneath the carriage entrance, which is the way that you get into the Senate side of the Capitol. It looks as though the presidential limousine, known colloquially as the Beast, is parked inside that carriage entrance. So they're not out in the opening here on the east front where I'm standing. They'll come in there through the carriage entrance into the first floor of the Capitol and then make their way up into the rotunda. So we actually can't see a glimpse of them getting out of the presidential limousine at the moment. Now, yeah, we can see them now walking into the Capitol from the carriage entrance here Those are the two sergeant-at-arms, the Senate and the House sergeant-at-arms, who are escorting them. You see Amy Klobuchar, who is the chair of the Rules Committee of the Senate. She and her committee were in charge of all the inaugural festivities and the planning of this massive event. They were also responsible for the quick adjustment in order to do everything inside. Trailing the two presidents, you see, of course, the Vice President, Kamala Harris, also the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer. And they will now make their way up to the rotunda. From where they are right now on the first floor of the Capitol, they'll have to go up one flight of stairs, and then it is probably about a 3-minute walk to get into the rotunda for this event. So pretty seamless.
Elon Musk.
Yep, Elon Musk there. We saw him come in with a number of the tech executives. So they are safely inside the Capitol, Lester, preparing for the next stage of this swearing-in process.
And we just saw Melania Trump enter as well, so we're getting close to the moment, the inaugural. There's Doug Emhoff, the outgoing second gentleman, and we'll continue to watch these arrivals. I want to go to Garrett Haake, also on Capitol Hill for us, with some news this morning about Vivek Ramaswamy, who we just saw mentioned that he's indicated. There's J.D. Vance, our incoming vice president, and his wife, Usha Vance. But anyway, Garrett, you have some information about Vivek Ramaswamy and his plans.
Yeah, Savannah, Vivek Ramaswamy has an interesting distinction here as someone who will be departing an administration and a post that didn't actually exist yet before he departs it. We have now reporting from two sources familiar with his plans that Vivek Ramaswamy, who is set to be the co-leader of DOGE, this new Department of Government Efficiency that the Trump administration is expected to set up in the coming hours, will in fact not be really taking on that role. He's instead going to run for governor of Ohio. That had been sort of widely rumored. We now have it confirmed that he's expected to make that announcement next week, and that it was impossible for him to do both things at the same time. We just saw Elon Musk in the rotunda. Musk is, of course, the other co-leader of DOGE, who, again, is a very complex and important figure in Trump world. He has no formal role. DOGE itself is something of an outside consultancy. It's not clear how much authority they will have. But nevertheless, Musk, with all of his entanglements with the federal government, particularly in the form of SpaceX, his rocket company, which has billions of dollars in contracts with the government, will now be in charge of finding, he says, $2 trillion in cuts to the federal budget. Now, in recent weeks, he's walked that number back, suggesting that a more realistic goal might be $1 trillion. But Musk and the team that they have put in place in some of these agencies will now be moving forward without the services of fellow entrepreneur and tech executive Vivek Ramaswamy, instead setting his sights on governor of Ohio.
We understand the crowds erupted who were down at Emancipation Hall, the spillover area, if you will, when they saw the picture of the two presidents entering.
And we're seeing members of his cabinet, if they are confirmed entering. We saw Pete Hegseth walk in a few moments ago. There's Christine Noem, several members of the incoming administration who are awaiting a Senate hearing. We had Senator Thune on, who's the majority leader in the Senate, who said he thought that all of these nominees have a path, which is Washington speak. Right? So saying something with, he's saying they have a path. It doesn't mean they have the votes.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
In that moment, I'm so glad you brought it up. I was just about to say it because it struck me watching that interview with Senator Thune, because he was asked pretty directly, can they get confirmed? And he kind of paused and then said that line. What does that mean? It means we're looking at some of the more controversial people who are yet to be confirmed. You look at somebody like Pete Hegseth, for example. He had his confirmation hearing. It seems like he is on track to get the votes, the Republican votes that he needs.
For the Defense Department.
Exactly, to serve as the head of the Pentagon. But remember what happened with Matt Gaetz, the person who Donald Trump initially selected to serve as his incoming Attorney General. You saw Senate Republicans flex that advise and consent muscle and make clear to Donald Trump that Matt Gaetz was not going to fly, that he would not have the backing. So as you take a look, I mean, there's Marco Rubio, selected to serve as the incoming Secretary of State. Robert Jr. That's going to be another very fascinating confirmation hearing. He's right there alongside, I believe that's Sundar Pichai. You see some others there as well. There's Pete Hegseth in the back, Pam Bondi, Doug Burgum. You talk about this sort of team of rivals. Several of the folks who are standing there are, in fact, Vivek Ramaswamy, former rivals in that presidential primary as well.
And one of the things we'll expect to see is when we talk about the new president signing many things today, among the things I would anticipate he would sign is the actual nomination for these cabinet members. We talk about them as nominees. They can't be nominees until he has the power of the presidency. That comes at noon. And in the flurry of those early events, I would expect he would sign those formal nominations, which then allows the Congress to move on some of those where they've completed the process. And so we could get votes as early as today.
And they appear to be
confirm.
leaning toward national security posts.
Absolutely. They're leaning toward, for example, Senator Marco Rubio, who has been picked to serve as Secretary of State. He, in his confirmation hearing, had broad bipartisan
Former Vice
support.
President Dan Quayle and his wife Marilyn entering. We're going to see all the living presidents here today.
But not everyone. We won't, all of the living presidents, we won't see former First Lady Michelle Obama. And that has certainly gotten some attention, though we will, of course, see former President Barack Obama.
She missed President Carter's funeral last week as well. So she's clearly downshifting from Washington.
And I think Dick Cheney also, for reasons of age and wellness, is opting out, in addition to the obvious political overtones that he did not support Donald Trump.
His daughter pardoned today by President Biden.
And a new statement from her, Savannah, just in literally the last 30 seconds from both her and Congressman Benny Thompson, of course, who helmed that, or were part of that bipartisan select committee on the January 6th attack, receiving those pardons from President Biden on his way out the door. And they say in this statement, we have been pardoned today, not for breaking the law, but for upholding it. Some of the first reaction that we are now getting from Liz Cheney and some of those others.
As we keep our eyes on the Capitol Rotunda, where the swearing in will take place, first of the Vice President-elect, J.D. Vance, and then of the President before noon, as tradition holds it. We want to continue to watch these pictures as they come in. There's Vice President Pence, former Vice President Pence, who, of course, served by Trump's side in the first term and did not endorse him for this next run for the presidency, and, of course, will not be joining as his vice president, but will be here at the inaugural. He walks in alone.
One of the most notable people to watch today, because under any other circumstances, he would have joined the president he served for another term.
Well, they had that moment just a few weeks ago at the Carter
Their first time seeing each
funeral,
other.
and I think we all kind of held our breath as they came in contact with each other, but they shared a handshake and apparently some polite greetings.
Polite, yes.
I think of former Vice President Mike Pence in the same light as I think of President Biden. These are institutionalists. These are people who take these traditions very seriously. They think that they are inextricable with this democracy.
Well, and it must be said that in this rotunda 4 years ago, on January 6th, this very rotunda where they are all standing now was overrun by protesters, some of them with the words "Hang Mike Pence" on their lips. And it'll be interesting to see if one of the actions we see the incoming president take today are pardons of those who were convicted in connection with January 6th. He has said so as recently as yesterday, that he believes his supporters will be very pleased with the decisions he makes there. J.D. Vance has said those who were convicted of violence may not be pardoned. We'll see what actually happens.
And here are some of the most powerful people in the world, the tech titans, as we often refer to them. Jeff Bezos with his back to us, I believe. He was greeting Elon Musk.
Sundar Pichai, there.
Mark Zuckerberg, you saw in the
Zuckerberg is in
corner.
there, yeah.
I do think it will be interesting to see which of the January 6th defendants are, in fact, pardoned. When I interviewed President-elect Trump, he said he wasn't ruling anyone out. But those comments by the incoming vice president, I think, are hugely significant and potentially a signal that the president-elect is shifting to looking at those who were not convicted of violent crimes, that he will draw the line there. Again, we'll have to wait and see what he actually
Hundreds and hundreds of names of those who have been convicted. So there is room to do quite a bit of pardoning should he choose to do so. And also to preserve the issue of violence exercised against law enforcement. If he wants to draw that line, there's a way to do it.
At least 1,500 people were charged in the events of January 6th. About 1,200 of them were convicted or pleaded guilty. Of those, just over 600 were sentenced to some sort of incarceration, ranging from just a couple of days up to 22 years. So there is a question here of how Donald Trump, if he does end up issuing these pardons as expected, will kind of slice that.
We are watching these images of the Capitol and some of the